SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to optimumcbd.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs. Hopefully we can see the light at the end of the tunnel of the Lachlan Galvin saga. 9 days in, we still haven't been able to get back to talking about football.
No, it's dominated the news cycle for a good 2 weeks now. So, unbelievable, an absolute circus. And just when you thought the Tigers had shown strong leadership, they pick him again in first grade as if nothing happened. So he's going to be playing again this week as if there was never any problem.
Do you think them picking him will solve the problem they had last week where they got smashed by Parramatta?
No. And this is a problem. We've talked a few times on this podcast about, I think we talked about it when the DCE issue sort of arose. That what happens once you get a player and I guess disloyalty in the ranks, effectively, that's in that regard the same things happen with DCE and Lachlan Galvin. So the problem once you get one player like that is the other players stop doing the little 1%ers really well. And that becomes the issue, and that will become the issue again with the Tigers. Yes, they'll get one of their star players back, but at what cost? They're star players who don't want to be in the team with him. They've expressed that to Benji Marshall the week before.
Yeah, and does he now think that Benji Marshall can coach? Has Benji Marshall solved those 7 issues?
Yeah, the 7 issues just disappear now, do they?
Are the rest of do you think? Well, it was reportedly. Still, no one really knows. It's all unnamed sources. Jerome Luai and Api Coruscant went to Benji Marshall reportedly and said that I want to play with Lachlan Galvin, and then a week later they lost to Parramatta, and they're like, you know what, we're happy to play with Lachlan Galvin now. Is that what happened?
It's just ridiculous, the whole thing, and this is why you can't ever put one player above the whole team either. Because you need all your players to be wanting to go in the same direction. And so you got to think that, right, they bring Lachlan Galvin back this week after he played that game in New South Wales Cup last week and didn't play in the NRL side. But then you go, look, at what cost? And the cost will be that it'll be there'll be a lot of disharmony in the team, a lot of disharmony in the camp. That's the issue with these things. If you didn't pick Lachlan Galvin, you just go, well, all right, we're down a star player, but we're all in this together here.
Yeah.
And that's been completely eroded now. He'll come back in the team, and this will just become more and more toxic. I can't see. Well, what's changed? Nothing's changed.
Yeah, that's
the point.
What changed from last week to this week? Like I said, did Benji Marshall now coach? Do Api Coruscant and Jerome Luai and obviously whoever else they were speaking on behalf of now like Lachlan Galvin again?
Yeah.
Does Lachlan Galvin now want to play for the Tigers? Does, and they got to play the Sharks. And the Sharks are, where are they sitting right now?
They
Top
are
8, right? 6.
I'm just bringing up the ladder
sixth,
now.
right?
Yeah,
so they're
they
sitting 6. Yeah. And they're notorious for dominating the teams that are outside the 8. Tigers are now, they've dropped out of the 8 after that loss to Parramatta, giving Parramatta, their 3rd win of the season? 4th win?
It was Parramatta's second win of the season, yep. So they won 2 and lost 5. Now that return of Mitchell Moses really, you could just see it. And a lot of people say, one player doesn't make a team. Well, it does in Parramatta's case.
It literally does.
Yeah, it does.
Was it Mitchell Moses got the luckiest draw of his career, actually, for coming up against the Tigers, who were in this typical Tigers mess of off-field drama derailing the entire season. He gets to come back.
It's a good week for him to come back. Week for him to come back.
It gives the whole team a lot of confidence because, what they will see in their minds is, Mitch is back and we carved him up. We put 40 points on him. Look how good we are with Mitch. But, you have to think obviously the coach won't want them to think like that, but you'd have to think from the outside looking in. One of the major contributing reasons is because the Tigers have all this off-field drama. They have all this Lachlan Galvin drama. They weren't in the game that good. The game was really like scrappy and crappy, and there were sin bins. There was a lot of emotion on the field, clearly from some off-field stuff, I think, on both teams. And yeah, like, you know, wow, that's a loud motorbike outside.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought that might have been our camera or something. I didn't know what that noise was.
That'll come up on the recording, but we're on the third floor and we could hear a motorbike from downstairs. But yeah, like, how much of it contributed? If Jason Riles is a good coach, not at all, because he'll have his team convinced that it didn't, and it's just the return of Mitch Moses gives them a lot of confidence, and they got the bye this week, so it gives him another week to get even more fit. He's had a good hit out, and then they'll play the Sharks next Friday.
Right, yeah, okay. Well, I mean, yeah, the game's changed for Parramatta now with Mitchell Moses coming back. They're a different team, and if he can stay fit, I'm expecting them to shoot a fair bit up the ladder. I'm not going to go as far as some others and say that they're going to make the 8 now. Like, let's not get carried away. No. But obviously their position on the ladder will improve the longer that he stays fit.
You think like this, right? What it can do for Parramatta to turn their season around. They just beat the Tigers, smashed them, and then they're going to have a bye, and the Tigers are going to play the Sharks. Now, just say the Sharks beat. We assume, I'm sure everyone will be tipping the Sharks to beat the Tigers, right? Then next week, Parramatta play the Sharks and beat the Sharks. How much confidence will that give all of the Parramatta players to get on that confident momentum roll where it's like, mate, not only did we smash the Tigers, Sharks beat the Tigers and we beat the Sharks. Like, it's a big what if scenario. Yeah. But yeah, how much can it really like jump that Parramatta player confidence and turn their whole season around? Just because with the coincidence of Mitchell Moses coming back, perfect time against the down Tigers, it can really it can be that, you know, one thread that moved them into an alternate dimension.
Yeah, I think I might have mentioned it maybe last podcast or the one before. There's people out there who say, one player doesn't make a team. Well, there are examples of it where it does. Andrew Johns with Newcastle was a classic example. Without Andrew Johns, Newcastle were wooden spoon contenders. I think they even won the spoon maybe in 05. No, sorry.
No, 05,
sorry, 05 was the year they were coming last, and then he came back, and then they improved, and they were one of the best teams.
14 in a row, and then went on a streak and almost made the 8.
Best teams in the comp, sorry. But I think we would agree, Andrew Johns out of Newcastle, wooden spoon contention. Andrew Johns with Newcastle, Premiership contenders.
100%.
Mitchell Moses, I'm not going to say Premiership contenders, but Mitchell Moses out of the team, wooden spoon contenders. Mitchell Moses in the team, pushing top 8.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say, and we'll see. Like I said, it can really that really lucky coincidence of getting to play the Tigers on the same week Moses comes back can really be that thread that changes it into an alternate dimension in which Parramatta actually push for the 8. You know, like I said, if the West Tigers lose to the Sharks and Parramatta beat the Sharks straight after, how much confidence does that give them?
Yeah, 100%. Actually, just to correct, I was actually right the first time. Newcastle did win the spoon in 05, but they did win a bunch of games at the end of the season when Joey came back.
They lost 14 in a row.
And they ended up winning 8 games for the season. I reckon off the top of my head they'd won about 1 or 2 games with about 6 games to go. And then Andrew Johns came back and they looked like the best team in the comp, even though they finished last.
And that was the year he also dominated State of Origin for us.
Yes, very famously.
You know, so he's back, and on top of that, an unnamed source has reported that his management sent a legal letter.
Yes.
So is it a legal letter or is it from his management? Is it from a lawyer? Which alleges he's been bullied by the club. Now, I've worked in places where you get legal letters. You know who knows about the legal letters? The lawyer who gets it and the board and the CEO. Yeah. So someone has gone out and told the news that a legal letter has been received, so it's either going to come from the person who sent it, because people who sent it is the management and the manager's lawyer, or it's going to come from the lawyer or the board or the CEO from the other side. We know it's from the board. Everybody now knows unequivocally, undeniably, all of the leaks come from the board. It's pretty well established. Everything comes from the board. They're the unnamed source, always. And it's always, if it's a Balmain thing, it's a West's Magpies board member leaking it. If it's a West Magpie issue, it's a Tigers board member leaking it.
And what do we make about the idea that these social media posts are bullying?
They're not bullying.
I mean, this is what upsets me, is that, you know, as I might have said on the last podcast, when we went into great detail on this subject, this Galvin leaving the Tigers at the end of 2026. The thing that really gets under my skin is, if you're going to do something like this in this manner, there is going to be a reaction from people. There's going to be a reaction. And they reacted on social media. Maybe the club should have had a bit more foresight and warned their players off doing that. But you leave in this manner, the players are going to react. And if they react on social media, that doesn't mean they're bullying him.
No.
This is the problem with modern society, isn't it? If people say things that people may not like, they just try and turn it around on them and say, oh, it's bullying.
I'm really hating the response to it from media, fans and everything like that, where they're getting into the semantics of what bullying is as well. You know, if you have to get into the semantics of it, you've just created a nonsense argument. Like, you know, the definition of bullying is... I was on one of those NRL shows. I saw the clip on TikTok. The definition of bullying is this, and they read out a dictionary definition, and it's like, do you think what they've done is prolonged targeting... You don't need to do that, man. Honestly. Because the way I figure it, like you said, they had a reaction, which is fair enough. And they just had a reaction. It's no different to, like, if Lachlan Galvin had affronted them and said, all right, guys, give it to me, what do you think? And they went, well, you're a dick for doing it this way, mate. That's not bullying.
And that's right. And these are, we got to remember, these are not, you know, this is not, you know, like Goldman Sachs or anything where they'd have the best PR firm in the world to instruct them on how to navigate this situation. This is a football club.
With a bunch of young, like, 20-somethings.
Like, that's just what they do. They react on social media. What can the club really do? I mean, they can't control what players in their own time are posting on social media. Just like any other organisation can't control what...
Well, they try.
Yeah.
Israel Folau got sacked for social media posts. Fair enough, he got warned.
I mean, but there is a difference between homophobia and just saying that you don't like it how one of your players left a club.
The thing with Israel Folau is, you know, like, and all of it, like, I support the freedom of opinion, but you got to counter bad speech with good speech or whatever. Israel Folau's an idiot for being homophobic. The thing with Israel Folau is he got warned. You know, have they now gone to these players and gone, guys, you can't do that? And then if they do it again, they can get in trouble, right? It's in your, like, put it in your contracts, put it in the policies, whatever. The way workplaces work is if something bad happens, you create a policy about it and then inform everyone and say, guys, this is the policy and you'll get a warning if you do it again. Yeah. So have they now gone down? And I still come back to, what's his name, Sunia Taruva, who did it to his close friends. He specifically went out of his way. You have to, it's only one extra button click on Instagram to do a story to your close friends. But he did the extra button, went out of his way to not target Lachlan Galvin, actually. It's like having a private chat in the pub with his mates in social media. Or a WhatsApp message or an SMS, you know, and then whoever he sent it to forwarded it on to Galvin. How is that Taruva bullying Lachlan Galvin? If I talk behind someone's back with the expectation it will never go to that person, how is that bullying? In what way is that bullying? And if Jerome Luai posted 48, so like what Nick Kyrgios does to like Yannick Sinner, that is kind of bullying. I mean, as much as I disagree with Yannick Sinner and the way tennis is, and we've had extensive conversations about it, Nick Kyrgios is just constantly barraging him with abuse on social media. That's bullying. Jerome Luai just made a post, man. Well, a story, even.
Yeah, and I think it was it was Taruva, wasn't it, with the Instagram story, and it was that show me the money.
Yeah, private.
But and all that is just saying, well, all Luai's post was team first, which is true. It's just the truth. It's not They didn't even really speak about him in, they didn't make derogatory comments towards him or anything. Luai's post was just team first. What's wrong with that? A captain saying team first. There's no bullying about that. And Taruva, the show me the money, well, that's just the truth. It's about money because Galvin's on 250 this year and 350 next year. So it's clearly a ploy from his management to go, well, we don't want to be on 250 and 350 for this year and next year. So what we want to do is we want to cause a big stir, cause a big ruckus, and get you out of this contract so you can start earning the Dylan Brown money now. Well, that's what this is about.
It's not about money because the Tigers offered him the most they'd ever offered anyone and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, they did for 2 years down the line. What happens this year and next year, right?
Then the only reason you'd have to, allegedly thoughts, conspiracy, you have to think, which is the current belief amongst everybody, the only reason he actually turned that down is because Parramatta has offered bigger money on the sly. That's the thing. So,
yeah, that's the thing. And
you go from the Tigers to Parramatta, you think that's about premierships?
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
It's cause a stir, cause disruption, get me out of my contract here, and then we go and start earning Dylan Brown money this year and next year instead of 250 and 350.
Exactly.
That's the whole ploy behind this.
No matter what anybody thinks, you don't go from the Tigers to Parramatta if it's about premierships. It doesn't matter what anyone says, any manager, any player. I just think I can win a premiership at Parramatta. Mate, Parramatta's got a rookie coach that started this year and at the bottom of the spoon. No one knows what's going to happen with Parramatta. Not a single person in the world can predict that Parramatta is even going to be better next year. Parramatta are in that Cameron Serrato Bulldogs thing. We go, maybe Cameron Serrato can't coach.
Yeah, we now know the answer to that, right?
But last year? No, the year before, anyone who says, if the Bulldogs were throwing $1 million at Lachlan Galvin and he says, it's not about money. It's about, I think I'm going to go and win a premiership. It's bro. Come on. At that time, 2 years ago, Tigers to the Bulldogs is nonsense if you think you're going to win a premiership.
Yeah.
Last year, Tigers to the Bulldogs, you can kind of see the growth and possible premiership stuff. This year, it's definitely not about money. But going to Parramatta, please. Ninja, please.
Yeah. and I would just say that your pre-season prediction, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but I will point out that pre-season, you did tip the Bulldogs to make the grand final. You were the only one to do that.
In the world.
I had them about sixth. I had them basically on par with last year. I think Mitchell Pearce might have had them about the same. I think maybe.
Yeah.
But you had them in the grand final. Yeah.
And Mitchell Pearce said to me, "Are you crazy? Are you stupid?"
And I would say that, again, early days, but we can only go on what we've seen. They've had 2 clean sheets the last 2 weeks, 2 nil shutouts of their opponents. You'd have to say that at this stage, that prediction is holding up.
Apparently, Cameron Serrato buys basically all the entire club coffee if they get a shutout. So
there's the incentive. Get a cup of coffee out of it.
Everyone gets a cup of coffee, guys. Keep it down to nil. But it works. So yeah.
Tell you what, they've started the season 6-0. This is the first time since 1938 that they've started a season 6-0. And that was the only other time that they've done that. So this is only the second time in their history that they've started a season 6-0.
You have to think with the Bulldogs as well. They're going to have low representation during Origin period. I'm not disparaging any of the Bulldogs players.
Yeah, well,
but you have to think how many of their players are going to be out for Origin. It's Crichton, most likely. And only possibly Burton.
He might get a spot on the bench, maybe
or 18th man.
But probably, I'd say someone like Jacob Preston in the forwards, maybe a chance of a bench spot as well for the Blues. So that's a possible. But you're right. On the whole, you are right that this is not a team of champions. This is a champion team.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to have this run through the Origin period, where it's going to be one of those things where they're top of the ladder, not heavily affected. And the other thing about that is, we're off rundown anyway, but that's all right.
It's all right. We don't have much time.
they've already shown they can perform without those specific players like Crichton and Burton and still win. So even if those players do get picked for Origin, they're going to come up against weakened sides where they've already won without plays like that and be able to win.
Well, this is the confidence that they would have gotten from winning those games without Burton and Kickout. They had Burton and Kickout for the first 2 games. Then the next 3 games they didn't have them and won all those games, and they only returned against Souths last week. So 3 of those 6 wins had come without Burton and Kickout as well. It's quite extraordinary. And just before I said they're a champion team, look, all right, I know they haven't won anything, but it's a figure of speech.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a team first team. Yeah. Essentially, it's not. To quote Jerome Luai there, it's not a again, as you mentioned, it's not a team that's going to be littered with state of origin representatives this season. But hey, if you're a Bulldogs fan, that's great news for you. You keep your players, lower risk of them getting injured because they're playing less games. Hey, I'd love it if none of them got picked because they keep playing for my team.
They're currently in this perfect situation. Like, I think I've used your what you were talking about with Toby Sexton a lot in the last week, where he's like doing the exact job and getting paid the exact amount of money that he should be getting paid, and doing exactly what he needs to do, and it's like there's perfectly managed right now. Yeah, and that's all of the players in the Bulldogs are like that, right? And that's the thing. Even when you talk about Jacob Preston, he's going to be talked about as like the Origin bolter, but it's more likely that he'll just be picked in the squad and then be returned. Yeah, it's like I think at most it'll be Crichton and probably maybe Burton at 18th man. I think he was 18th man for one of the games last year. Yeah, and it was really stupid because he didn't play and didn't get to play for the Bulldogs.
I will double check that. What's interesting about Toby Sexton is, and I was actually talking to Braith Anasta about it today, of all people. What's interesting about Toby Sexton is that I think what they're sort of looking at is that they haven't re-signed him yet, and then the Bulldogs have pulled out of the race for Lachlan Galvin as well. So
wonder why that is.
So what's interesting, and again, Anasta didn't say this. I'm not quoting him. This is just my thoughts about it. But what I find interesting about the Sexton situation is, you go, well, the talks have stalled, so why have they stalled? And then you go, well, is Toby Sexton looking at Dylan Brown and going, well, how could Dylan Brown be getting... And it's fair. From Toby Sexton's point of view, it's fair.
Yeah, I think Toby Sexton's manager is looking at Dylan Brown and going, he's the $1 million...
I'm in the team that's undefeated. Yeah. I'm in the team that's won 6 in a row to start a season for the first time in 87 years.
As any other team, fan... Who would you want right now? Dylan Brown or Toby Sexton?
And if you're Toby Sexton's manager, well, you're saying that to the Bulldogs, right? And so then we go, right, so that's probably what the hold-up is here, I would say, because Toby Sexton's doing a great job. And so they would want to re-sign him at the right price. So is what's happening here, we're theorising here, but is what's happening, the manager's gone to the club and said, we want more money, but the club are then going, well, hang on, we're loving him at the price we've got him at now, but are we prepared to pay this extra money for him? And I'd say, without knowing anything again, I'd say that's what the hold-up is.
Yeah, I'd say Phil Gould is saying we're not willing to increase because he's getting paid what he's worth, and our offer is what he's worth. And so that's probably the hold-up. Because, again, back to Dylan Brown, and you have on the rundown, we did jump a couple of things.
Yeah, we're going a bit. Yeah. We've a bit short on time, but we're a little bit short on time.
Like the Galvin-DCE-Dylan Brown circus, is it good for the game? What the Dylan Brown trigger has done has created the DCE and Lachlan Galvin circus, and possibly, I don't think the Toby Sexton situation is going to become a DCE and Lachlan Galvin situation, but you have to assume that the Dylan Brown nonsense has created also an issue with Toby Sexton. The biggest difference in all of those clubs, when you think about the Knights taking Dylan Brown and Manly having the issue with DC and Tigers having an issue with Lachlan Galvin, is none of them are headed up by Phil Gould. who will say to his manager, go find $1 million somewhere else then.
Yeah, that's the thing. Phil Gould will have in his mind a figure for Toby Sexton that we don't go over, and that'll be it. And if they want more than that, it'll be thanks, Toby, but we're moving in another direction.
Phil Gould is the kind of thing I do to my kids, where it's like, oh, my friends have this. Cool. That's your friend. Go get your friend as their dad there. Go friend's dad then. Because that's the way he is, and that's the way he's managed the team, and that's the way the team is. Everyone is doing a job, and they're getting paid the exact right amount of money for those jobs. Yes, some of them will get upgrades. Like, I think Preston re-signed. I can't remember. But his next
look it up if you want me to.
Next contract will for sure be an upgrade, because he's now like, amongst fans I've seen he's mentioned a few times with Origin talk. I don't think he's ready for Origin. But I think he could potentially be. 2 years ago when he debuted, I said at the end of the year he was my favourite player that I saw that year. I loved him. I love the way he plays. I love the angles he runs.
Yeah.
He reminds me of like a young Boyd Cordner.
So Preston is re-signed until the end of 2027.
Yeah. You'd have to think that if he keeps going there, he'll get an upgrade. And Phil Gould is also... one of the things that I heard recently, I was actually talking to Aaron Warburton at the Bulldogs.
CEO.
Yeah. And he was saying when Phil Gould came in, one of the major changes that he implemented was you're not just looking at 2025, 2026 or 2027 salary cap. You're also looking at 2028, 2029, 2030 now. And that's what he does. So he's going to be looking at Jacob Preston now for 2028 and going, what are we going to have to put him on? And that's that kind of thing, you know? And it'll be the same with Toby Sexton. It's like, this is what we're going to offer you because we're managing our salary cap this far in advance.
That's right. And just to go back to what you were alluding to before, Matt Burton was a replacement player, the 18th man for New South Wales in 2 of the 3 games last year, in Game 1 and Game 3. Just getting back to what we were talking about before with this, valuing players and everything. If I was a player manager, I would love Parramatta because they'll pay overs for your client.
Yeah.
If I was a player manager, I wouldn't like Phil Gould because Phil Gould, he knows what your market value is and he's too smart to pay over it.
Exactly. That's what.
And I mean that as a compliment,
Toby
obviously.
Sexton is going to become like a hot ticket item. Like I said before. Who would you rather be in team right now, Toby Sexton or Dylan Brown? Right now. So he's a little bit of a hot ticket item right now because he's leading this halfback for the 6-0 undefeated 2 duck egg teams that are conceding a ridiculously small amount of points. It is nonsense. It's under 10 points a game. It's nonsense.
If you're Toby Sexton's manager right now, all you need to do is walk into the negotiation and say one thing. How is Dylan Brown getting $1.3 million a year, given the way his team's going? And how is my client not getting similar money to that, or more, essentially, when he's in the team that are 6-0 to start the season and clearly on top of the ladder?
And then you think about it, the Bulldogs are going to respond, but everyone's doing their job. Everyone's getting paid what they get paid. So if you think Toby's worth more, I'm sorry, we don't want him to go.
Yeah, well, they've still got a job to do.
He can go, and then we'll replace him with...
I think what has to happen is people just need to look at the Dylan Brown situation in isolation.
And go, it's broken everything.
Yeah, this is one example of a club paying far too much for one player. So just because they're paying this amount, the $1.3 million a year, the Powerball $13 million over 10 years, just because they're paying this amount to him, that doesn't mean we're going to pay you, your salary in accordance with that.
Yeah.
I.e., if you're better than Dylan Brown like Toby Sexton, we're not going to give you $1.8 million a year.
Bro, if you think you're worth more than 1.3, then go to Newcastle.
Yeah, it's like...
We know that Newcastle will pay you.
Yeah, it's like... And I don't want to sound too harsh, but, the Dylan Brown situation, it's like paying... you're paying $50,000 for a $25,000 car. Yeah. That's what you're doing. You're probably paying twice as much as what he should really be on. Maybe even more than double the amount.
It's one of those things, like, I quoted Mitchell Pearce a few times about where he says you're worth what someone will pay you for. That's actually, I've realised this week, that's a misleading statement, okay? Because you aren't, as player isn't essentially actually worth what someone is willing to pay for them. A player is worth to that club how much they are willing to pay for. Dylan Brown was only going to get $1.3 million at Newcastle, and all these players, like, you assume Daly Cherry-Evans, Lachlan Galvin, and possibly Toby Sexton, and whoever else is going to come up next, is going, if Dylan Brown's worth $1.3 million, then I'm worth way more. But no. Dylan Brown is worth $1.3 million to Newcastle. Mm-hmm. If you want way more, go to Newcastle and say, buy me for Dylan Brown money. They can't because they've spent Dylan Brown money. Mm-hmm. But you think Melbourne's going to pay $1.3 million for Lachlan Galvin?
No.
Daly Cherry-Evans? Toby Sexton? We don't know anything about Toby Sexton. We're just using him as an example. Think of all of the clubs in the thing. You think Brisbane's going to? You think North Queensland's going? Maybe North Queensland. What at this stage? They're all over the shop. You think Wayne Bennett at the Rabbitohs is going to? We've already established. We highly doubt Phil Gould at the Bulldogs is going to. I don't think Shane Flanagan would. So it's not the players are worth what someone's willing to pay. Yeah. It's the players are worth to that club what that club is willing to pay. And that's what they really need to think more about over, mate, if Dylan Brown's $1.3 million, then Nathan Cleary should be asking for 2.8. If he was going to Newcastle, he should ask for 2.8.
Yeah.
But he ain't. And it's the same with Toby Sexton. Yeah. Toby Sexton's worth $1.3 million to Newcastle, but he ain't worth $1.3 million to the Bulldogs. And that's what the managers and everyone should really realise.
Yeah, and maybe the thing that you should say before you say, someone's worth what someone's willing to pay them, in this case, Dylan Brown's worth what Newcastle are prepared to pay him. The question what you should say before you consider that point is, no, is he worth it? Is he worth that money? And he may not be, and he's not. We know that he's not.
Same thing. I'd say the thought experiment. What other club would have paid $1.3 million?
That's the thing. So then you go, well, is he? Is it? Well, then you say, like you said before, well, I don't agree that you're worth what someone will pay you because he's not worth that money. He's not worth it. They've paid overs for him. Mm. So I don't agree with that line of you're worth what someone will pay for you, because sometimes clubs make bad decisions with their recruitment, and this is. I think this is the worst in terms of, I guess, value for money. This is the worst purchase in the history of the game.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think about it like that, right? He's getting paid $1.3 million at Newcastle, which has set off this massive chain of events across all halves, a bunch of halves, every half that's off contract basically. And it's a 10-year contract, right? If it was a 3-year contract, unless they win a premiership, and it's on the back of Dylan Brown being the number one player, you think after that 3 years any other club's going to give him $1.3 million? He's not going to be getting an upgrade, right? He's just lucky his manager was able to pull that 10-year deal. So even then, if a player is walking around going, if Dylan Brown's worth $1.3 million a year, you have to think like that. You are worth to the club what the club is willing to pay in the time period that they're willing to pay you for. And after that, there's no guarantees, right? The other thing about it is with Dylan Brown is $1.3 million. What were other clubs offering him? Nobody knows.
As you understand it, I mean, I think he was on a good deal at Parramatta. I think he was on huge money at Parramatta. But apart from that, no one else was offering him anything.
And so, if the bidding war was between Parramatta and Newcastle, and Parramatta were like, we'll give you 800, 900,000, and Newcastle immediately jumped to, keep forgetting, 10 years, $1.3 million a year, supposedly indexed to the salary cap. 10 years. As we said before, who wouldn't take that?
Yeah, and it's almost as if Parramatta have done Dylan Brown a huge favour, because by paying him that huge money, they've somehow got it in Newcastle's heads that, this is the money you got to pay him, and then that's how he's got the deal. Yeah. I doubt that he would have got the deal if Parramatta were actually paying him what he was worth. Yeah. That's the problem. Parramatta have paid him an inflated amount, and then Newcastle have paid him an even more inflated amount. And with Newcastle, it does sound like a lot of money. Well, it is a lot of money, $1.3 million a year. Of course it is. But as big an issue, if not more of an issue than what they're paying him each year, is the length of the deal.
Yeah.
The 10-year deal.
10 years.
Because they're going to ruin their salary cap for a decade, Newcastle.
10 years is crazy. And like I said, if he doesn't win that premiership if they don't win a premiership on the back
they're not going to win a premiership.
1, 2, 3 years, they got to think like, oh, God, we got another 7, 8, 9 years of this.
Newcastle haven't won a premiership for 24 years. Do you really think they're going to win one in the next 10 years?
Dylan Brown.
I doubt it.
And if he moves,
a lot else would have to happen.
If he went to when he goes to Newcastle next year, if it's in the form that he's in right now, seriously, think about it like that. Like that's the really thing that Newcastle fans should be worrying about. He's in poor form right now because he's had to manage the team. Yeah. He's going to Newcastle to manage a team, right? His team was bottom of the ladder with him as the main man until Mitch Moses comes back. He's going to go to Newcastle. If he goes to Newcastle and continues that run of form in the first year, they're going to look at it and go, oh my God, we've got 9 more years of this. Oh my God, we've got 9 more years of this.
It's the worst deal that's ever been done in the history of the game.
Brilliant manager.
In terms of value for money.
If I was a player, I'd be sacking my manager and going...
And getting Dylan Brown's manager?
Chris Orr, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's the best manager of all time.
I'll tell you a funny thing.
If you can get that deal for Dylan Brown, well, you're the best manager
around.
around.
When I typed who is Dylan Brown, the first autofill was manager. So I guess a lot of people are searching.
Chris Orr is I think Chris Orr will be getting a lot of business soon.
Speaking of managers, we can just jump back to the Galvin's manager, Lachlan Galvin's manager, Isaac Moses, is basically now being labelled the architect of the entire Tigers saga. We can also discuss at the same time this complaint. The story came out that a complaint was made to the RLPA by 2 additional players at the Tigers, one of whom was managed by
Isaac Moses. Yes.
And the other one, there was some link between his manager, is Isaac Moses's friend, ex-business partner, something like that, right? There's some link there. So these threads that keep coming out, and again, unnamed source, who, doesn't want to be named because of confidentiality and blah, 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 going to Sydney Morning Herald and saying, they've complained to the RLPA. So much, the Tigers had to release a statement that said, we contacted the RLPA, we spoke to both players who were named in the story.
Yeah, that's right.
And they haven't complained about anything. So what's going on there?
Yeah, and look, the 2 players you're talking about, Justin Matamua and Brandon Tumeth, allegedly, and I quote, raised issue with how they've been treated by the club, end quote. Look, the Tigers denied this. They said that this story wasn't true. But then the RLPA came out and clarified that, yes, they had contact with those players. So it's a bit of back and forth here. Oh, this didn't happen from the Tigers, and the RLPA going, well, hang on, we have spoken to them. So,
it's bizarre.
Yeah, it's just, I guess you don't know who to believe there at the moment.
Again, it's what are they called? It's unnamed source. See, what they said was here the West Tigers statement is very short. Club can confirm that reports published on April 21st, 2025 by the Sydney Morning Herald naming 2 West Tigers players were not correct. Neither player has ever made a complaint to the club or the RLPA. This was confirmed by both the players and the RLPA this morning. The story is simply not true. Felt it was important to clarify this as the report has caused unnecessary stress and hurt to the players and their families. Then they updated it yesterday, or this morning. Since the release of this statement, the Sydney Morning Herald has issued an amendment to the aforementioned report. SMH amendment reads, an earlier edition of this story stated that Brandon Tumeth and Justin Matamua had made complaints to the RLPA about the West Tigers. This story was amended on April 22nd to reflect the fact that Tumeth's manager made the complaint to the RLPA, while the RLPA independently raised concerns directly with the Tigers in relation to the club's treatment of Matamua, end quote. And this is very weird because, again, Sydney Morning Herald, unnamed source, blah, 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 blah. Both players are managed or have links to Isaac Moses. Tumeth's manager made the complaint to the RLPA. Not Tumeth's manager. Who's Tumeth's manager? Isaac Moses or Isaac Moses' friend. I can't remember which one is which.
Sorry, did you say Tumeth?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is Isaac Moses. Yep.
Tumeth's manager.
Yep.
So after issuing a legal letter that somehow got leaked to the press, that Lachlan Galvin was complaining about bullying, his manager then went to the RLPA and complained about Tumeth. Well, complained on behalf of Tumeth. The club went to Tumeth and said, "Bro, are you alright?" And apparently he said, "I didn't complain, man." And it's really screwed up, like, with my family and everything like that. And then
this Isaac Moses situation, but this is where players have got to be wary of him. I mean, he's not thinking about what's best for his players.
The NRL need to step in, deregister him, and ban him from ever being involved with players again. He was heavily involved in the Melbourne salary cap saga. He was heavily involved in the Parramatta salary cap issue. He was deregistered, and then Uncle Nick from the Roosters is good mates with him, stepped into the NRL and begged him to...
they've now fallen out, haven't they? Yes.
Who was best mates with him at the time, stepped in and got them to allow him back in, and now they've fallen out. The stories say that while he was deregistered and not allowed to be a manager, other players' managers would do calls with the clubs, and Isaac Moses would be in the room, not on speakerphone. Like, they'd have a call on speakerphone, and Isaac Moses would be in the room listening to the speakerphone. Like, it's the NRL has a player agent accreditation system. The fact that a player, it's so clear a player agent is manipulating this, and you got to feel for the Tigers. Like, everybody right now just feels for the Tigers. All of the internet sentiment, media, everyone is like, mate, you just got to feel for the Tigers. Here's another story about the Tigers and the poor Tigers. This guy is like tearing apart a club that was finally fixing itself. And these things, like Tumeth's manager, Isaac Moses, made a complaint to the RLPA, and apparently Tumeth didn't know about it. Then what the thing about the RLPA independently raised concern directly with the Tigers in relation to the club's treatment of Matamua. Why?
Yeah.
What? Out of nowhere, someone from the RLPA approaches the Tiger and goes, "Hey, we got a few concerns about this player." Do they do that with other clubs?
And yeah, no, that's right. And this is the problem: is that Isaac Moses isn't accountable for what he's doing. I mean, he doesn't wear the consequences of what he's doing. Lachlan Galvin wears the consequences of what he's doing.
More every day.
So he behaves in this, destructive manner. I think that's fair to say. Yeah. And he bears no consequences. Lachlan Galvin bears the consequences. Tumeth bears the consequences. Isaac Moses doesn't bear any consequences for what he's doing.
You think about this sequence of events for the Tumeth and Matamua thing, right? Sydney Morning Herald publishes a story. Tigers come out and say they've spoken to the RLPA and they've spoken to both players, and the RLPA and the players both said, "Nah, I don't know what you're talking about." Right? Then later, after the Sydney Morning Herald has retracted it, they've added now that the manager has now approached the RLPA, and the RLPA has independently raised concerns with the Tigers. That sequence of events is, story comes out, Tigers go to the RLPA and the players say, "What's the go?" Both of them say, "There is no go." And then a few hours later, the RLPA goes, "Actually, now there's a go." Like, what craziness is that?
Yeah.
Unnamed source, on the condition of confidentiality, blah blah. At this point, you'd have to say that even the that leak didn't even come from the board. That had to have come directly from Isaac Moses.
Yeah.
And he just stuffed up his order. He informed the newspaper before he went and made those complaints. You don't know, but in my mind, he went down his roster and went, who have I got at the Tigers? Yep, Tumith. Let's cause some issues.
Yeah.
And what is anybody doing about it? Why is the NRL not, like, sitting there going, nah, this is beyond ridiculous. This is not how player agents...
It could only happen in the NRL, couldn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Why are they not doing anything? It's the NRL needs to step in and just go, mate, you're sacked again. You're discredited. You're not allowed to represent players. You got 2 months to farm all your other players out. If we hear of any player that, or any manager that does a arbitrage through you, or you do arbitrage for them, that player manager is going to be discredited, disaccredited, and those players will also get in trouble.
Yeah, that's right, 100%. I know we are doing things a little bit on the fly, but I was going to jump to talk about this Danny Weidler newspaper.
Yeah, he was the one who did the newspaper article about Matt and Griffith as well. So he's had another article.
Yeah.
He's on a roll this week.
Well, I was keen to talk about this now.
Yeah.
Look, I need to declare I have recently started a new job at Fox. So I work at the same company as Braith Anasta. I've spoken to you about it off camera. That's how it is now. I'm not going to, bag someone who works at the same company as me, but I'm just putting that out there. But what I would say is Weidler wrote a really nasty article about Braith Anasta on Sunday. And what's interesting is he has a go at Braith Anasta's, what he calls a conflict of interest, because he's a player manager and he's on a TV show. What Weidler has, he's pointed that out a number of times. But haven't you noticed that Weidler never talks about Phil Gould's conflict of interest? That just falls by the wayside. We never see anything said about Phil Gould's conflict of interest, which is a far more glaring one than Anasta's one. He's the general manager of a club, and I support that club. But you've got to call it for what it is. You've got the general manager of a club appearing on television shows, supposedly giving impartial opinions. I'll tell you what, the opinions on Lachlan Galvin haven't been very impartial. You know what? I've got a little idea. Maybe Phil Gould never had the intention of signing Lachlan Galvin, and he just wanted to talk him up to get his price up so that some other club pays too much money for him. Does anyone thought about that as being a possibility?
He would never do something
he would never do such a thing, would he? He would never do such a thing.
He's not a shrewd negotiator like that.
He wouldn't be thinking...
We've just spent the first half an hour talking about how well he manages stuff like that.
Has anyone thought that maybe he was never interested and it was all a ploy to get Lachlan Galvin's price up so that some other club pays too much money for him and some other club digs themselves in a hole?
Then can't chase Toby Sexton?
Yes. It's amazing how... But anyway, I just thought, and look again, of course, I work at the same company as Braith Anasta, so of course I'm not going to be saying anything about him. But, come on, he has a go at Anasta all the time, but he won't mention Phil Gould's conflict of interest here as the general manager of a football club and a media personality.
Danny Weidler has a conflict of interest in not revealing his anonymous source about the Tumith story.
And this is the thing. Look, I'm not going to be
journalists shouldn't reveal their.
But this is the thing. I won't be a hypocrite here. Danny Weidler. I get why he won't say anything about Phil Gould. He works with him, but don't then go and have a go at somebody else for having a conflict of interest.
No.
Don't. If you're in that position, all right, okay, I get it, but don't then go and have a go at Braith Anasta about it when you've got Phil Gould's conflict of interest right in front of you there at Channel 9.
No, it's whining about Braith Anasta saying something like he wanted to bash him or whatever, but actually it was a conversation about how somebody in the conversation suggested they should do charity boxing matches between commentators and journalists, and Braith Anasta said, sign me up, I'll do that. They do charity boxing matches all the time, boys. Look, Danny Weidler does not have a very good reputation amongst fans, to be honest. The general sentiment around him is, all I've seen this week, especially with his 2 stories that he's published, his first, this Tigers one was nonsense, and then his second one where he just bagged Braith Anasta.
It's not very, it's very unprofessional to just take a whole side column in a newspaper and just give it to somebody. If that's how he's going to play it, that's how he's going to play it, but it doesn't reflect well on
It's a funny thing, right? These journos, I don't know what you call Braith Anasta, media personality, and versus a journo. Danny Weidler
a TV, rugby league TV show host, I call him.
Danny Weidler has a newspaper article in right and bag Braith Anasta. Braith Anasta can then go on television and bag Danny Weidler, and it gives us stories that aren't about Lachlan Galvin.
That's the thing, and I talked about
Thank God.
I talked about our sort of like on the fly rundown today. And now that you brought up Lachlan Galvin again, I was keen to point out, just have a bit of a debate, and it's not in relation to any news story specifically, but I was keen to sort of debate with you your thoughts on, just the Galvin saga, DCE saga, Dylan Brown saga. You got people. I think Andrew Johns said, "Oh, this is terrible for the game." Well, is it? I mean, people are talking about it.
Yeah.
It's like it's pub. This is my thoughts on it, right? Nobody's getting hurt. People are talking about rugby league, and people like Andrew Johns will say, "Oh, but the focus should be on the game. Why are we getting bogged down in player transfers?" It's like, yeah, but the games are on the weekend. We need something to talk about Monday to Thursday, and this is perfect. People are talking about rugby. I'll tell you, honestly, I don't know if you feel the same way. I feel like rugby league is more popular now than it's been in the last 30 years. I reckon that it is.
Yep.
And I reckon this is part of the reason why. There was a period there where, after Super League, and I reckon into the early 2000s, where a lot of people were off the game. And that probably went into like sort of 2007, 2008 sort of time, where they struggled a lot with crowd figures. And then you had people saying to you ridiculous things like, "Oh, the AFL will take over Sydney in 10 years," and all this sort of rubbish. But I'll tell you, right now the game is booming like it never has before. We just had Canterbury and South get the highest regular season crowd of all time. On Good Friday, 65,000. Interest in the game is booming now, and I think this is part of the reason why.
So the only thing you can compare it to is AFL, right? And we've discussed at length before AFL's iron-fisted control over journalists writing any stories. They got King Corns, the AFL mouthpiece, dictating what stories are allowed to be written, usually about players, clubs, and personalities that are critical of the AFL. I think I mentioned before, so, one of my friends from the US told me you don't get all these news stories in the sports in the US because they have sport every day.
Because that's the thing, they have games every day.
Their sports section has to be previews and reviews.
Yeah, because baseball teams play like 164 games a season, and the season's only 6 months. Yeah. So in baseball season, baseball teams are playing games every day.
80 teams.
Yeah.
And so it is good for the game because it keeps you, like you said, Monday to Thursday, we don't have any rugby league. We don't have anything to talk about, actually. Sunday night is generally when you talk about, so game happens on Thursday. Thursday night to Friday morning, you talk about what happened. Games happen on Friday. Friday night to Saturday morning, you talk about what happened. Games happen on Saturday. Games happen on Sunday. Sunday to Monday morning, you talk about what happened. That's what my WhatsApp, rugby league-based WhatsApps are, the game that happened. And then, from Monday to today, what's Wednesday? Wednesday?
Yeah,
Wednesday?
Yeah, it is.
Monday to today, all we've talked about is Lachlan Galvin.
That's right.
And my mate Adam, one of our guys in my tipping competition, is an avid West Tigers supporter.
He listens to us?
Sometimes. He's given up on rugby league. Sad to see you go, Adam. We'll see you in a couple of weeks when the Tigers start winning, bro.
Oh, he's given up, has he?
Yeah, he's just given up on rugby league completely. He went to the game on the weekend, and he said there was just heaps of people there in Magpies jerseys. He's a Tigers supporter. Magpies jerseys there to watch the Magpies game, and then they didn't watch the Tigers game. They went and watched the the lower grade games and didn't watch the Tigers, the first grade team. That club is in this situation, and the news, it keeps them in the news. Unfortunately for the Tigers, they're just the news cycle for the past 8 years.
And that's what's so upsetting, isn't it? That you thought they finally got their house in order, and now this is derailed. This has derailed them again, and now Benji's job might be under pressure now because of this.
Balmain Tigers' favourite son, Benji Marshall, comes back to coach West Tigers, and all of a sudden we get all these leaks and stuff that are coming from Magpies. Like, that's the problem with the Tigers. And yeah, it is good for the game. It keeps it in the news. Unfortunately for Tigers fans, I feel sorry for them. I feel sad for them. I feel sad for the club. They are just the story, and it's because of that board issue. And that's the other thing. I sent a message. I said to all my mate the other day, like, the NRL should step in and just sit the board and go, look, you're all sacked, and we're tearing up your bylaws, and we're just taking over. We're appointing a board now. The board's going to have nothing to do with the Magpies or the Tigers. All you are out of the club. None of you have anything to do with it. We're going to run it for a couple of years. We'll get you back up to where you need to be. And then maybe we'll let you back in. We'll have a quick chat about it and see if you've learnt your lesson. But all of you are now on a timeout. That's it. You're all on a timeout.
Yeah.
It's good. It's like I said, it's good for the game. It's just sad to be a Tigers fan. Bad for Tigers, but good for the game.
Yeah, again, we're talking about players potentially moving football clubs. There are a lot worse things we could be talking about, like if there were some serious off-field indiscretions or something like that. That would be a different story, right? But all this is just player movement. It's not... Some people talk about it like it's the end of the world. It's like, okay, so you might play for another club, okay, it's all right. It's all right. People are still talking about the game. They should be happy with that.
Yeah.
It's great publicity for the game. And that's the other thing I was going to mention to you was the Lachlan Galvin got mentioned like very early on channels. So remember, Channel 7's not the NRL broadcast rights holders. It's not in their interest to be promoting rugby league. They would much prefer promotion of the AFL, obviously, because they have the AFL TV rights. Lachlan Galvin was one of the lead news stories on Channel 7 News. News stories, not sports stories.
Remember, news is the most watched TV show every day.
Yes, you've got, 300,000 or 400,000 people in Sydney watch. That's like the only free-to-air TV show outside of sport that people watch anymore is the news. Lachlan Galvin was a top story in the news on Channel 7, which is an AFL network. If you don't think that's a win for rugby league, then I don't know what is. I think it is a win for rugby league, I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. You think about how many people who might not have watched the game will now go and watch the Tigers play the Sharks, just to see how Galvin is. They're gonna. It's gonna. Curiosity.
It sort of adds to the plot, doesn't it? I mean, it's been first it was he's been dropped. Let's go see. Let's go with the other 500 people and see how he goes in the New South Wales Cup this week. Yeah. Then all of a sudden they lose the game, and then they've picked him. Now he's back. Now the next stage is how does he go back in first grade this week?
Definitely good for the game. They need. And
it's perfect for the game.
You need stories that aren't about the game.
That's the thing.
Like you said, it's better than player misbehaviour. At least it's not a guy driving a car on the wrong side of the road, high on cocaine and unlicensed.
Yeah.
It's just a few players have decided that they're worth more money than they're currently getting paid.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that's all anyone will talk about. Yeah. The AFL would kill for that sort of publicity in Sydney. Rugby Union would kill for it. Soccer would kill for it. But you know what? They're not getting it.
Does Rugby Union get any news?
No. No. Not in the last 20 years, at least. Not since the 03 World Cup.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. These other codes would kill for this sort of publicity, but They're not getting it. Rugby League's getting it. And I really do think that the game is stronger now than it has been in the last 30 years. That's my honest opinion.
I definitely agree.
In terms of interest levels of everybody, people you talk to, and you might be the same, who 20 years ago weren't talking about the game, they're talking about it now.
Yeah, well, every single person I know who follows rugby league has messaged me about what do you think of Lachlan Galvin. Every single person I know who follows rugby league, who I've bumped into, seen at the gym or whatever, what do you think about Lachlan Galvin? Yeah. It's just... the other day it created a massive conversation between like 4 of us that delayed a class getting started. Because it was so interesting. But it's great.
So it's delaying the start of class. Yeah. That's how interesting it is.
Exactly. Can we talk about Jye Arrow?
Yes.
I sent a message to some of my friends. It was like how douchey do you have to be a player that gets all worked up by a fan blowing love hearts at you?
Yeah.
Jye Arrow level. But how douchey do you have to be to keep going when you're clearly upsetting a guy? To keep blowing love hearts when he's so upset and he's being held back by people. That fan level.
Yeah.
Like, it's...
Yeah, it was an overreaction.
It definitely was.
And he looked like a complete fool.
Yeah.
Players, all right, even if he'd reacted in a worse way, and again, you said it was just blowing love hearts.
Yeah.
Or, even if it was something worse than that, you don't react if you're a player. You're supposed to be above that. They're getting paid huge money. They've got to be above that. They got beaten 32-0. They were terrible.
Oh, yeah, they were.
They were terrible.
Awful.
They were atrocious. I actually ended up going to the game
God,
for my sins. Yeah, I ended up braving up. I got one of those $10 tickets, so the
sweet.
Easter saver. I was right up the back. But they were well and truly outplayed. Their attack threw nothing at the Bulldogs in defence. I've never, and you know how you probably have worked out that I'm a paranoid supporter, where I get nervous, anxious.
Yeah, Bulldogs fans are really in this mode right now.
And I worry that I'm the sort of fan who, even if my team's up by 20 with 15 minutes to go, I still don't think the game's over. I've never felt more comfortable watching my team in a game. The whole game, I was thinking they're not going to lose this.
They didn't look like Rabbitohs didn't look like even coming close to scoring.
I thought they're not throwing anything at them. The Rabbitohs attack threw nothing at the Bulldogs' defence. Nothing was going to worry them. You didn't feel like at any stage that the Rabbitohs were ever going to score a try. No, ever. I've never felt more comfortable. At half time, I thought this game's over.
At that Bulldogs Dragons game that I went to opening round, and I think it talked about it. I was surrounded by Bulldogs fans, and Bulldogs were up. They were clearly winning, and all the fans around me were like, "Yeah, but mate, remember last year against Manly in the semis? Mate, just remember that. Remember that."
Yeah. I got a funny story for you actually. After the game, when I was walking out, there were these some Bulldogs fans, as they do, were chanting, "Oh, go back to Redfern, go back to Redfern." And then one Rabbitohs fan turned around and goes, "Hey, don't forget 2014, mate."
Oh my God.
So he's pulling out the 2014 card on us. Obviously, the Rabbitohs beat the Bulldogs in the 2014 grand final. 11 years later, we're still getting the 2014 card still getting played.
Has nothing happened since then?
It is 11 years ago now. It is a long time ago.
Man, yeah.
But yeah, that 2014 card still gets played.
The police went to the person as well. I don't know if you like the Love Heart guy. The police approached him as well and asked what are you doing? Yeah. But one thing that did come out the next day, because it was Lewis Dodd's debut game, he played off the bench.
Yeah, he did. Yep.
He said he has never heard or experienced as a football player the abuse that he was hearing from the Bulldogs fans behind the bench.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they're abusive. Yeah, but you just got to rise above it.
I know you haven't watched Ted Lasso, right?
No.
So there's an episode in Ted Lasso in which, spoiler alert, one of the players finds out that his best friend, other player friend, is gay, and he doesn't know how to handle it. Mm-hmm. Right? And he's upset not because the guy is gay, which is what comes out, but the guy lied to him or hid it from him. He thought we were best friends or whatever. Mm-hmm. And at some point in the game, at halftime, one of the fans yells out like a homophobic slur to him. Mm-hmm. And so he jumps into the crowd and tries to bash the guy. Yep. And then in the press conference, the Roy Kent character tells this story about how when he was young, just up and coming as a footballer, there was a guy in this club who was having his first baby, and Roy Kent made a joke to him about how the baby's, statistically, it's more likely that the baby is Roy Kent's than that guy's. And the guy bashed him, really bad. His fellow teammate bashed him and got sacked and was never able to get a football career again and all this kind of stuff. And then Roy Kent runs into him a few months later, and the guy tells him that they had lost their baby, and that's why he had the adverse reaction. And he says in that, and it's a TV show, but he says in that everyone should really understand that, yeah, they're football players. Yeah, they're professional sport players. But they're also people. And fans seem to think that just because they buy a ticket, they are entitled to say whatever they want to the players. And actually, that's not true. Mm. when you buy a ticket to a rugby league game, you don't have the right to say whatever you want. And if a player who's from England, whose fans are hardcore, would come out and say it was the worst I have ever experienced, man, seriously, English fans are hardcore with the abuse they are. The Bulldogs fans, I think, should really take that and realise that they have a reputation for going over that line. Mm-hmm. Football players are humans as well. So you don't know what's going through Jye Arrow's head. Mate, my assumption is he was upset because he got smashed. Yeah. Right? Like, that was really the reality of it. And the guy that was teasing him was doing nothing. Really. Total overreaction. But like I said, how much of a douche do you have to be to continue to do it when you see Jye Arrow is getting worked up and wants to climb up into the stands to bash her? The only reason that guy continued to do it was because he knew he had aisles and aisles of protection. Jye Arrow was never going to be able to climb up into the stands and bash him. And there's a famous occurrence where a team, like I've said to my friends, like, man, if that was at the UFC, there's a video, you can look it up, where a fan is yelling abuse at Marab Devashali, and Marab jumps the fence and goes up to the guy. And straight away, the guy's like, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please don't bash me. Like, that's the reality of it. You shouldn't say things that are so terrible that would spark someone up that they would want to bash you. Okay? Again, that one guy that sparked up Jye Arrow, he didn't say nothing. Okay? But all fans need to think like this. If you ever if you said something so abusive that Lewis Dodd thought it was super abusive and he'd never heard anything like it, and you were saying it to Lewis Dodd and he saw your face and he walked up to you in the car park afterwards, are you going to say it to him again? You know, would you say it to your friends or whatever? Banter is fine, but abuse is not, I guess, is the whole thing. Like, you don't know what they're going through. There's lines that you can cross, and man, I follow the UFC where there almost are no lines. Like, really. For some fighters, there are no lines. Conor McGregor, Sean Strickland, Dricus du Plessis, Colby Covington. Yeah. Like, there's no lines, right? But I'm saying to all rugby league fans, don't be that guy that yells offensive abuse to the opposing players. Because you don't know what they're going through. They're just people. They are professionals. And just because you buy a ticket doesn't give you the right to yell abuse. But again, I will reiterate, I've repeated a few times, what that dude was doing was nothing, and Jye Arrow is a total douche for sparking up like that, bro. He's just blowing love hearts at him.
Yeah. And you mentioned Lewis Dodd. I thought he was a bit hard done by, because Wayne Bennett in the press conference after the game even said, oh, look, I'm not going to judge him on that because, you know, we've thrown him into the game when the game's over. I'm not going to judge him on that performance. And then Wayne Bennett's dropped him to the reserves this week.
Yeah.
So that was a bit... He said he wasn't going to judge him on it, and then he's dropped him. So...
I think
I'm not saying... I mean, they can both be true, right? He can still... You know, he can say that, oh, you know, I'm not going to judge him on this and still drop him if there's someone else who comes in and replaces him who he thinks will do a better job. But I still just thought, you know, oh, you've said...
Oh, he's judged him.
Yeah, you've said that you won't judge him, and you've just dropped him from the team there. So,
yeah, you got to feel for him because, you know, Wayne Bennett's obviously in panic mode right now. He's dropped, so that was the other thing.
Yeah, that was the other thing. Latrell has been moved back to fullback. Jye Gray's been dropped.
Yeah, Jye Gray's replaced Lewis Dodd on the bench.
Yes, so that's what sparked this.
It's
rough on Jye Gray because up until I think a couple of weeks ago he was leading the Daly.
Latrell came back. Until Latrell
he was leading the Daly. Yeah. So, yeah, right.
The return of Latrell Mitchell has taken the ball away from Jye Gray.
And Latrell offered nothing in that game against the Bulldogs. He offered nothing.
His return, he played right centre, whatever centre it was, against the Roosters. Did they beat the Roosters?
The Rabbitohs. Yeah, they did. Remember, he threw that pass that
was about
that went 5 metres forward, and they allowed it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was clearly the best makeup. But since Latrell Mitchell has returned, obviously Latrell's a superstar player, but he's taken away from Jye Gray. And I'm sorry, I know Wayne Bennett is a master coach, but surely your solution is not to drop Jye Gray. surely it's to tell Latrell Mitchell, Jye Gray is also now one of the superstars of our team. And so you guys need to actually work together. Let's get you at the centre, where you're clearly actually better. He's a better centre than fullback. I don't care what anyone says. And Jye was leading the Daly M count until you came back. It's until Latrell came back.
Yeah, he'll have to do a lot more running at fullback too, which he didn't want to do much of last week.
Yeah. He's going to have to do a lot more positional. He's going to have to be a lot better.
Yeah, and just quickly, Tom Trbojevic is back for Manly too, and boy, do they need him. They've lost 3 games without him.
Mate, the Dragons invited them back into the game. I was watching that match in horror. Also, the Dragons did score off another one of those ridiculous forward passes. But I was watching that match in horror. They were up like 14-0 or something, and it ended up being 20-18. All right, they invited Manly back into the game. They said, "Please take the game."
Yeah,
and Manly couldn't finish it because Tom Trbojevic was missing.
Yeah, Manly lost. All 3 games without Tom Trbojevic. Yeah. So there you go. And that game did frustrate a lot of tipsters, including myself last week.
I tipped the Dragons.
We just thought so even at Brookvale. Manly couldn't beat the Dragons without Tom Trbojevic. So Tom Trbojevic doesn't play. Don't bother tipping Manly. There's a hot tip.
I was originally going to tip Manly, and I gave it to producer John, who does the social media posts and stuff like that, as Manly, and then I sent to him, "No, wait, PC's flipped me. PC tipped the Dragons, and PC reckons the Dragons are going to get up." And what I've found with Mitchell Pearce this year is if he's always have one against the odds, and he's gotten them almost every single time. Like he tipped Cowboys against the Panthers as well, it was, yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, that game, you just have to think, really, during that whole game, I was sitting there thinking, man, but they were 8-0 at half time, and then, Manly scored first in the second half, and then they came back to whatever it was, I think they came back to 12 all or something like that. I can't remember. But Dragons literally gave Manly the game. And if Tom Trbojevic had been there, they would have won. They only lost on one missed conversion. Dragons
led 8-0 at half time.
They lost on one missed conversion because Manly kicked one less conversion there. Both scored 3 tries. Valentine Holmes 3 from 3, 1 penalty goal. Ruben Garrick 2 from 3, 1 penalty goal. Mm-hmm. And you just have to think the amount of room and position that the Dragons were given Manly. If it had been Tom Trbojevic, they would have scored and they would have won. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to keep talking, but I think we might be might have a time violation here.
Who was it who got pinged for a time violation in the scrum the other day? The Dragons. They didn't pack the scrum. Clint Gutherson didn't put his head in. That ref, whatever his name, who was the ref in that?
In that game?
Quickly,
I've got it in front of me, so.
What's his name?
It was Peter Goff.
Yeah, apparently him and I saw a thing afterwards. Him and Gutherson hate each other. And Clint Gutherson's lost more games with that ref than any other, and been penalised more by that ref than any other ref. And the Dragons got a scrum penalty because Gutherson's head wasn't deep enough between the other 2 players.
Wow, that's sort of a Ricky Stewart level conspiracy.
Yeah, but they still won, so I can complain about it because I'm Ricky Stewart. But yeah, that's it for the week. Sorry, I gotta run. Don't forget to go to optimumcbd.store and buy all your CBD. You must be over 18 to order. Orders over $100 get free delivery. And we'll see everyone next week. Follow at SmartB app on social medias, etc., and play Smart Play.
Thanks, Sean. See you then.
Dan. All right, man.